times out of 10.
You lost your dog, you been through it all, I know how they feel, yeah. Got a hole in my heart, I'm forever scarred, but somehow I still care. Know they thought I would fall, but I'm standing tall and look at me still, yeah. And whenever I call, my niggas gon' come if they in a wheelchair. Feel like dodging the hate today, I'm probably gon' ride in the charger. Thinking about the mistakes I made, I get in my mood and go harder. If I stay on my pace and stay in this lane, I'll be harder than lava. I don't know how I did what I did, I'm just thinking it.
Yo, what's good, man? Finally, we're back, GBD, with another episode. Finally, man. We got a
Yeah,
great guest today. Great guest. I don't want to do too much talking, but coach, mentor, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, but we got a great guest, my guy, CJ Parker, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. And I appreciate y'all for having me, for real. I've been following y'all for a little bit. Y'all do a lot of good work. But yeah, like he said, my name is CJ Parker. I'm the assistant men's basketball coach at UConn Avery Point. And then I'm also the education justice youth organizer at an org called Hearing Youth Voices in New London. So I do a lot of youth leadership development, community organizing, issue-based campaigns, that type of work. But again, I appreciate y'all for having me on here.
Definitely appreciate you coming on.
Sure.
And again, coach, he coached me last year at Avery Point, just so y'all know. But we're going to get into everything. First, I want to start off with where are you from?
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in New London, like just like my dad was born and raised in New London. Like, so we are a pretty big New London family, and that definitely made me who I am today. Like, New London is a very unique place, just even the way it's situated. Like, there's no other real cities around us. Like, Norwich is there, but Norwich is also different from New London, and so like it's kind of like an isolated feel, and all the stereotypes you hear of inner cities are like amplified in New London, and it's not as bad as people think. Like, things happen, but it's like a shared experience we all have. Like, being in New London, it really feels like New London against the world, because there's just not that understanding from the people outside, and they push these narratives on us that really are untrue. There's so much talent in every variety of life in New London, and that's why it was a beautiful place to grow up, because just the rich history and culture and everything. It's a beautiful place. Definitely made me who I am, and pushes me to want to support the next generation as much as I can.
I like that.
So did you grow up playing sports in New London?
Yeah, absolutely. I started playing Little League baseball when I was 9, rec basketball when I was 9. And I played travel soccer, not like a AAU soccer, but like basically like rec soccer. We would just play against the towns around us in New London too. Also, when I was 9, so like from then on out, I played those sports, and I played soccer and basketball all 4 years of high school at New London High School. Baseball was probably my best sport, honestly. But after 8th grade, I don't know. I love basketball a lot. I try to stick with that a little more.
No, I feel you. And I know you said being from New London, it's kind of slept on. Being from Connecticut, you're slept on, period. So, being from New London, did you feel like growing up you had a chip on your shoulder, like you had to prove everybody wrong? Like, we do have talent here?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like, and in New London, we take pride in that, because New London's history. So New London High School is the only school in the state as of a few years ago. It could have changed by now, but one of the only schools in the state, and at the time the only one, that had at least 5 state championships in both baseball, football, and boys basketball. Mm-hmm. And like, when you walk in New London's gym, we don't hang conference championship banners, division seasonal championship banners. We don't hang that. We only hang state championships, and the wall is still full. So you walk in and you can look on the wall and you see, like, you playing a rec game at the high school, you stepping on a court that like D1 players were playing on, right? Like, straight legends in the city were playing on, and like it gives you kind of that, like, we have to keep that going. But it's also like, being from Connecticut, like, people really don't know that there's hoopers out here. Right. And we have legitimate basketball talent on both the men's and the women's side every single year. So it does give you that chip. Like, I remember my freshman year, I didn't touch the court for real, but I got to dress varsity my freshman year at New London. We played Cardozo, which is the best public school in Queens. And like, we beat them, right? Like, when I was in 5th grade, I got to see New London play against San Diego High School from California. And like, New London lost. They lost by 6. We talking about a school with 700 people versus a school of 3,000-4,000 people in San Diego, a city of 1 million people. And it was a competitive ass game. Like, so like New London, and there's an interview Chris had when he was going into the NBA, as a rookie. It was like one of the rookie like one of the NBA pages posted it. It was like an interview thing, and he came back to New London and he said like New London just produces dogs. Like we just have that in us. And I mean, we're not the only city in the state like that. Like Hartford, New Haven, Bridgeport, it's the same way. Waterbury, Meriden be having hoopers. Like we got, like I said, there's hoopers all over the state, and we have a lot to prove. That's for sure.
Yeah, I know you mentioned Chris Dunn. You know, for those who don't know, Connecticut legend with the Providence, made it to the NBA. But who are some other people who, you know, you grew up watching or you played with that, you know, influenced your game or, you know, made it big?
Yeah, 100%. So the first person I have to go with is Alan Chaney. So if you're not familiar with him, Alan Chaney is a 6'9" player who was the first Connecticut player ever ranked in the ESPN Top 100. He was a class of 2008. Now, granted, they started the rankings in 2007, at least putting him online. Yeah. But still, he was the first, and we haven't had many since. So Alan Chaney was a 6'9" wing, really, who got a full ride to Florida. And to put that in context, Florida was coming off their back-to-back natties. Like, they were the team at the time. And that was one of over 25 offers that he had. Yeah. Allen averaged 25 points or 26 points, 15 boards as a senior in high school. And he usually only played the first half because they were blowing teams out so badly. Like, he's somebody who legitimately probably could have averaged 40 points a game, which sounds crazy. But he was, you got to put in perspective, he's the first modern big the state saw. We never saw somebody 6'8" plus that could play on the wing in the CIAC until Allen. And like, he knows, I've been watching basketball. My dad's a coach. I've been watching Connecticut basketball my whole life. He watched it his whole life. Like, that's just what it is. So it's like Allen, big time. He just had a heart condition, unfortunately, that just kept him out the NBA. Otherwise, I have full confidence he'd be in the NBA. He was on par to do that. And even with that condition, still was all conference at the D1 level when he finally got cleared at High Point. So he influenced my game just because, one, I knew he had good grades at the time too. And I always grew up like with pretty good grades. And so like he was somebody I just looked up to early on because I was like, oh, he could hoop and he's doing it in the classroom. Plus he was just different. And then there's other guys like Kareem Brown and Lee Mitchell were a backcourt for New London in 2004 and 2005 and 2006. They won back-to-back state championships as sophomores and juniors. They got upset as seniors. But like Lee was a 6-foot lefty who was flashy as can be, went to CCRI when they were Division II JUCO, giving out scholarships, killed there. Kareem played D1 at Coppin State. Like, so even before like Chris Dunn and Torrin Childs Harris and Malcolm Simmons, Keith Porter, other D1 players got to New London, I got to see them growing up and all had some sort of influence on my game. I definitely wasn't as good as any of them, but like I took bits and pieces and just try to be the best that I could be.
Nah, definitely. I like that a lot. And I think between the AAU circuit, the prep circuit, and just overall, like the fact that college basketball is becoming better, I think Connecticut is going to hopefully start making a bigger name, depending on D1, D2, D3, you know, whatever level it is, or someone goes prep or whatever. I think Connecticut's going to start really showing up more and more throughout the college level. But again, this segues to our next point I wanted to talk about with you is, I spoke about a little bit about in the beginning is what do you do exactly? So I know you spoke briefly about it, but what do you do exactly as an individual from day to day to things you do on the weekend, you know what I'm saying, as a coach, mentor for the kids?
Yeah, I mean, my time is like, it's booked just trying to create the world that I want to see. Like I have a vision of the world that I share with a lot of other people. You know, we have to live how we think society should be. And over time that can start to create that cultural shift that has to happen inside of us. So what that looks like for me is like, especially before the season, is getting some of my young boys in the gym at 5 a.m. so that they can work on their craft and learn what it takes to play at the level they want to play at. Whether they do or don't, they're going to pick up habits from that will transfer to any aspect in life, right? It's also giving them exposure in the sense of bringing them to collegiate games so they can see what it looks like. It's like, okay, not only are these guys talented, this is what they all do off the ball. This is how they defend off the ball. This is what communication looks like at a higher level, just so they can see that. And because you find in New London, we have 3 colleges in the city of New London, and they're all D3. Games are free. But if you ask your average New London kid, have you ever been to a game? The answer is no. Like, even with them in the city and being free half the time, the accessibility still isn't always there. So it's like trying to bridge that gap for whatever it might be. So like that's like my kind of like training side of things. But then like you look at college coaching, we're trying to build a program here at Avery Point that's a little different than the past. Oh, my lights went out. Hold on. Nonetheless, oh, there we go. Nonetheless, yeah, my fault. Nonetheless, what that looks like is like being out recruiting faithfully. Like, you know how it was at last year, like leaving practice right when it ends to jet to a high school game, trying to get players, trying to build a program. And like there's one of the dads of a player who also coaches AAU, and he just goes to a lot of basketball stuff. He's like, man, I don't know if I've been to a basketball event in the last year that you weren't at, right? So it's like trying to just be as dedicated as I can to bring in the talent and the character of players that will help represent our university well. And then it's also like scouting, it's film, things of that nature. And then like outside of coaching, the community organizing, that's developing relationships with not only young people to try to gauge their capacity to be a leader right now and their potential to become leaders as time goes on. It's also creating relationships with decision makers and policy makers so that when I get in front of them, they know everything I say is credible. And that's how we can make a policy type change, by adding that advocacy from our own lived experience, right? Like we can use the numbers, of course, to back up our lived experience, but it's like being able to present things in a way that the people in power will respond to, because they're not always on the same page as us. And that's why things are the way they are. So we just have to do what we can to make sure that when people get in front of them, they know what they're talking about, and we have a chance to pass bills. And like my job, Hearing Youth Voices, has been integral in passing a lot of bills at the state level, such as public schools requiring Black and Latinx cultural studies. As of this school year, all public schools are supposed to have a Black and Latinx cultural studies class. And that's because of advocacy groups like that.
I like that.
Yeah, so I think that, does that answer your question? Like that, my day-to-day, like, yeah, like sports and community organizers, you gotta be flexible. So every day might be a little different, but that's kind of like what it looks like.
Definitely. What I was gonna ask you is, as we can see, like you're very busy, but at the same time, you have certain tasks and jobs that you always like get to. Like you want to help your community and change the community. Is there something specific that happened growing up, or was it like a compilation of things that you were like, you know what, I need some change here?
Right. Yeah, that's a great question. I would have to say it's more like the compilation of things. Like, so for example, because when you're growing up, so many things can be so normalized, no matter how asinine they might be, that's your lived experience. And if you haven't seen anything different, or it hasn't been put in a different context, you can just be like, this just is how it is, and operate that way. But there's like one event, for example, when I was younger. I mean, there were things when I was younger that I just felt like were wrong. Just like naturally, I was like, I feel like the world doesn't have to be that way, right? And then, so my favorite movie growing up was Coach Carter. And being a coach's son, and New London and Richmond, California are so similarly demographically, like I watched that movie, I'm like, damn, this is like really my dad's team. And what really solidified that, I have a cousin from Newtown, which is way different. That's the other side of the state, suburbs. And he came to a game, he stayed at my house for a week, and he was like, yo, this is really Coach Carter. And that made me realize, like, oh, this is like really different for him. Like, this is a movie to him, whereas this was like every day to us. And obviously there's so many things in Coach Carter, you're like, it doesn't need to be that way. Like, this is sad that kids are going through this, whether it's Gridiron Gang, all these movies you watch that are based off real life. And so like that kind of is how like my framework I started. And then I went to a private school for 7th and 8th grade, where basically I was one of 3 Black kids. And really it was like me, I'm 3 races, my friend who's fully Black, and my friend who's Native American. And we were the 3 Black kids. Like, and the things that were said to us were off the wall, whether it's by other students, by teachers, like you name it. I could talk forever about that. I'm not gonna do that, but like that put it in a perspective. like I grew up in New London, it's real diverse. I went to a school called the Regional Multicultural Magnet School for elementary school. Like we were taught to celebrate differences. And then I got to that private school and like, I was like, damn, people are really racist. Like in 2010, like in 2011, like in this era, like I just didn't know that. And I had no concept that like there's also the systemic side of things, which is why New London looks how it does and Waterford doesn't look that way. Right. So then I get back from private school, I get to New London High School and I'm able to take more advanced classes because of that opportunity. And I'm like, to me, that's wrong. Like, of course, I'm going to take these classes. I'm no smarter than my classmates. I just was able to get exposed to concepts that they weren't able to staying at our public school in New London. And like, so kind of seeing those educational differences and then having a brother who like me and him are smart in our own unique ways. His school experience was drastically different from mine. And I thought he was treated very, very unfairly, as were many other people. So I'll fast forward, I get to college and I learn in sociology classes about like systems and things like that. And that really sparked it. I was like, okay, this is intentional, which means there's something that can be done about it because the systems are set up this way. This isn't just a natural progression of things. Like, so that, yeah, it was just a mix of things, like whether it's racist experiences, lack of opportunity, because there's a huge opportunity and achievement gap. And I recognize at my private school, those were just kids that could pay to go there. Just like I'm no smarter than my friends that were at Benny Dover, the public school in New London, nor were they. Like I was with smarter people while I was at Benny Dover. The school just had a different level of funding. Like that's really what it was.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I had a similar experience. Like growing up, for me, you know, I was blessed to have coaches that cared about me, who showed me new experiences, who were able to put me in, you know, not public schools, prep schools, so I can see a different side of things. And I know how big you are in the community. So what I'm trying to ask is like, how can, as a coach, like how can we help the community? How can we continue to help the community grow? And show them these new experiences, like not just on the basketball court, but like show them the like systemic racism side, like how it's built into the system to work against us.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great question. And I think there's multiple right answers to that. Like there's such a long history of really good disciplinarian coaches, especially in urban public schools. And like my dad's one of them. And he had pretty positive results. Like my freshman year team, we talking about New London High School, we had, I think it was 13 kids on a varsity team, 12 of which went to college, which if you looked at college going rates, and mind you, this is a team of all Black and Hispanic kids. The one kid who didn't go to college happened to quit the team. So like, that's a measure of success. And he didn't have to talk to us about systemic racism or like things like that. He just had to hold us accountable, but in a way which would help us reach our goals, not necessarily just punishment for the sake of punishment, right? And so he was able to achieve results like that. It's a communal effort, right? That's just a common factor between all of us who went to college. Not all of us graduated, but just the fact you had 12 Black boys out of 13 go to college from New London at a school where at the time we had about like a 60-something% graduation rate. So it can look like that just by showing that you care in the development of that person. And everyone shows care in a different way. Like my dad's not some lovey like person like that, but you can tell he cares because the energy he puts into you, right? Like for me, you talked about like that exposure, seeing different sides of life. So like for me, if I have an opportunity, I'm gonna bring kids somewhere else. Even if it's not basketball, I might bring them to a baseball game. Like maybe it's just going to Boston to visit a random campus. Like it's just seeing everything else that's out there to expand their worldview, because you can't aspire for what you don't know about, right? So like you said, that exposure is critical. Accountability is critical. And you can be like Coach Carter too. Like you can tell them 1 out of 3 of y'all is probably gonna end up in prison just based on stats, right? And open their eyes to that systemic aspect of things. Like if things don't change, like this is the method to my madness, right? I used to coach at New London High School with the girls team with Coach Tammy Millsaps, who is a phenomenal coach. And she would talk to the girls about diet. She's like, how come all of my players, when I coach in Hartford and New London, y'all eating fast food all the time and you see the impact on the energy, but we go play these suburban girls who are no better than y'all and we still might beat them, but they're in way better shape. And it's definitely not because they working harder in practice. If you went to one of her practices, you would know no one's working harder than her girls. Like, but it's the nutrition aspect because all of it's connected. And then she would instill habits in them. And then even I coached in Boston with someone named Coach Sean Bryan, another phenomenal coach. Also used to coach at the Division I and Division II level like Coach Millsap. And we would sit the kids down sometimes. We're in the Dorchester neighborhood of Boston. Yo, I can't believe this. And we would just have those conversations about what it is to carry yourself in public. Because we had a situation that came up, some kids were going to get in trouble, but they decided to hand it to the basketball coach. And we just had a conversation about how to operate in society. So like, there's so many ways you can do it.
Definitely.
But you have to care. I think the baseline, the common denominator is that you care and are invested in the success, not just on the court, off the court as well.
And I think, listen, there's a lot of knowledge and a lot of stuff I can build off of, but I think one of the main things that I really truly agree with is just like showing the kids that there's another way. Like me and Q, we grew up with a bunch of people who like their goal, or maybe like not even their goal, like they were just aimlessly going through life. Like if they played ball that year in high school for whatever, that was a year. Like that was their year. When they got to graduation, like they graduated, so what? Who cares? They didn't see nothing besides, you know what I'm saying, Hartford County. They didn't see nothing besides Hartford. So it's like that's all you know. If a coach is talking to you or a guidance counselor is talking to you and they consistently on you about maybe it's not college, maybe it's go to trade school, maybe it's just do something different to where there's a different avenue. A lot of kids don't have that, but I think that's huge. You know, having a different avenue to go down than just, yeah, the season's over, let me try to get my diploma. You know what I'm saying? Like, let me see it. Let me see if this works.
I agree with you 100% because, you know, growing up, you know how our neighborhood is, you know, growing up, you just think things are normal, right? I didn't learn about, you know, like redlining or systemic racism until I went to college and I had that experience. Now, like taking sociology classes, being a sociology major, it's like, okay, I understand why our neighborhood is split, you know, I understand why like we might not have the best foods or, you know, there might not be the best grocery stores in our neighborhood, you know, or why everybody in our neighborhood looks like me. And when I go over this neighborhood, everybody doesn't look like me anymore, you know? So I feel like these need to be educated on it and have these experiences so they can have a new mindset. Because if you never leave your environment, that's all you know. Like you said, that's all you know. You're never going to try to excel or do better. You know, so we need coaches such as yourself, you know, to continue to influence these kids and, you know, open doors for them so they can see, you know, a better life for themselves.
Nah, y'all are absolutely right, for sure.
And I know me and Q have talked about this, and Coach, me and you have talked about this, obviously different occasions, but even in movies like Boys in the Hood, when Lawrence Fishburne was talking to Cuba Gooding Jr. about there's a reason that there's a liquor store and a gun store. Obviously, in Connecticut, the gun's a little different, but there's a reason there's a liquor store in every single, like, I swear, every single corner. You know what I'm saying? Maybe two a corner. So, like, there's certain reasons for things, and if we're able to open our eyes to these things and show differently, like you took the kids to, was it Philly in the summer, right?
Yep.
Okay, and like, how was that? Like, that was probably their first time going out there, huh?
Yeah, at first time that wasn't AAU, and you know how that is.
Okay.
You're just in the gym the whole time or a hotel. You're not actually experiencing that place. So yeah, we did a mini road trip where we went to a Mets game in Queens. Then we went to Baltimore first, saw an Orioles game there, and then we went to Philly. Went to like the zoo and saw the Phillies play there. So, but in the meantime, exploring the neighborhoods, seeing how life is different. And that wasn't necessarily like, oh, this is like there's necessarily better out there. It was like put things into perspective. Like I remember we were driving through Baltimore and they're like, yeah, I couldn't go to school out here. Like this, you could just feel it. Like it's a different place. And
no, definitely.
like, and then that was my first time really exploring West Philly. And I was like, yo, I can't even believe this exists. Like the art in both cities is phenomenal. Like there's so much positivity there, but it's like the material conditions people have to live with are unacceptable. And like, it's like what y'all are talking is because of that history of redlining and like just, I mean, everything compounds it. And, but it was an eye-opening experience for them, for sure. And just for them to have those experiences, like So it'd be like, I just went to 3 different ballparks, like, and realistically over the summer, probably weren't going to go anywhere. Like Savon has family in Bridgeport, so like, you know, he'd be going there. Philly, Boo does have family in Philly, so like he was familiar with there, but you know, Baltimore is a new place for all of them. So it was just dope for them to see that, experience different food, like just so many different things.
No, facts. And you know, growing up, we all think we're going to go to the NBA or the NFL. You know, so how do you get through to one of your players who, you know, might not have that in their destiny, and to have a a fallback plan, but inspired to be something else, like a doctor, a lawyer, or something like that, that get through their heads.
Oh yeah, no, that's critical. Like, it's actually sad how many times you could ask a kid what do they want to be when they're older, and it's like the first time they've ever been asked that. And so now just to ask that question starts a thought process that might not have existed before. So that, for one, already is opening doors. But then for 2, when you can actually, like you said, like get the exposure, say there's other things for you to do besides rapping, besides basketball, besides just anything you see on TV,
Right.
like now it's like, yo, you could actually do, like, you are really good with your hands. Maybe you might be like a good carpenter, electrician, or something like that, right? Or like another person, like, yo, you work really well with kids, like, or you would be a great mentor. Maybe you should be an elementary school teacher. Like, whatever the case may be, is just encouraging them to find what they're passionate about outside of the sport. And like, maybe you just get a job in your sport, and that's cool. Even still, those are hard to get. Those are few and far between. But it's because you need the exposure. Like you said, like, all we know is that, and like studies show it, Black kids, especially in inner cities, hold on to NBA dreams way longer than suburban white kids. Like, by the time a white kid's 11 years old, they talking about being an engineer or a dentist or whatever the case may be. And you got Black kids who didn't even make their high school team in the inner city, and they're talking about going to the NBA. Like, it's unrealistic, but it's because what else were we taught, right? How many people in our community were able to even expand beyond that? Like you look at Hartford, like joblessness in Hartford and one of other places is crazy, off the charts. So it's like we don't have the social, like the social not capacity, but like basically that, like we don't have the social network to like propel us to these other fields. And it's not because of a lack of skill or a lack of intelligence, it's a lack of opportunity and exposure. So it's always just questioning kids, like, what does it do like out of basketball? Like, I know this might be your favorite thing, but I know there's other things you like to do. And if not, we have to figure that out. But it starts with that conversation. What do you want to be? And then preparing them for how to get there with whatever answer they come back with.
Right. And even if, you know, they do go to college, play basketball, like you can't play basketball forever. You know, you got to find something to fall back on. So I think that's a good conversation to have with these kids. You know, either way, you have to have a backup plan, you know, after whatever you do, you know?
Definitely.
No,
and I think we've talked about throughout the segment, but what would you say like are the most important things for positive change, if you could just touch on those? Like what would be the most, like the best things to, you know what I'm saying, change the community for either the political reasons, the kids, everything, and anything like that?
Yeah. I'm gonna try to, let's see. One, we have to have more equitable funding, like not just at a national level. Like, obviously our military gets a ridiculous amount of resources that they haven't even been accountable for, but also at a local level too, and a statewide level. Like, there's no reason, for example, the New London Police Department should be getting more money than the recreation, the human services, senior center, and public library combined. So that just shows what you think of your community as the people passing that budget. And that just shows, my fault, something called me. That just shows, it shows your priorities. And you're starting with an opportunity gap just right there by those budgets. So anytime you can become involved and advocate for a more equitable budget for what your city needs, I 100% applaud that. Like, everyone should try to do that. But furthermore, let's see. I would say,
if we're thinking,
we have to unlearn a lot of things. We grow up being indoctrinated with so many false ideologies, especially as Americans. We're in such a independent society, and that's not how humans operate. We are community oriented, and you can travel the globe and see places that operate on a community based level rather than prioritizing the individual. And that just creates a healthier society. So it's like, yeah, some people really did get it out the mud, but to sit here and say you were self made, it's impossible.
Mm-hmm.
Like that doesn't exist, nor should we have ever aspired to be that. We shouldn't aspire to not receive help, to not receive support. Like those are such unrealistic goals, and they don't add any merit to what you did. If anything, it displays how backwards our society is. So we have to that's just one example, right? Another example can be toxic masculinity. Like there we can really get into anything. There's so much we have to unlearn, and that will help shift our priorities. And basically, when we do come across new information, how we go about learning new things. And that's how we
Don't have any alarms.
Like we just have to, there has to be a revolution inside of individuals before we have an external one. Otherwise, we could get rid of these systems, but if we didn't all have a cultural shift inside ourselves, then what's the point? We're just gonna recreate the systems that be with some sort of reform or something like that, but we're gonna have the same results. So like I would say unlearning what we've been taught since day one, like really think about the things that have been directly or indirectly like pushed into our brains and be like, does this actually make sense? Like, and then evaluate it. Some of them might make sense, some of them might not, right? So like those things, and really advocate for the funding. Everything starts with funding. Like if we want more community centers, more things for kids to do, we have to advocate for the funding. It can't just come out of thin air. Like our cities are responsible for that. And you'll find our cities have way more money than you thought. When I found out New London has a municipal budget of $100 million, I was shocked because you have roads that look like they're not like they haven't been paved in decades. You have no opportunities for some, just not enough opportunities for youth, like barely any youth employment and all that. And we have $100 million to play with, and our schools are underfunded. So it's just the priorities. Like if you were to look at Hartford, I don't know Hartford's budget off the top of my head, but I promise you, if you look, there'd be some questions to be raised.
I bet.
100%.
I bet.
Yeah, but no, we've been having good conversations so far about everything. But like always, we gotta wrap it up. But before we wrap it up, we gotta ask you a question we ask everybody. What are your top 5 artists in rotation right now?
Ooh, top 5 artists in rotation right now. G Herbo always in my top 5. So definitely him. Meek Mill too is almost always in my top 5.
Sure.
I like La India a lot. She's a Spanish artist, I think from like the 90s. I've been listening to her heavy recently. As well as I've been kind of on a Whitney Houston kick recently as well.
Okay.
Just top 5 rotation, yeah. And then I'll probably go with, I love this question. I'll probably go with Benny the Butcher. Those probably my top 5 right now.
We haven't got that one yet. I like that.
Yeah, that's new. That's new for real.
Yeah,
listen,
check them out.
Listen, definitely. Listen, I appreciate it. The main things I really took away from this is that we as individuals have to be better advocates for ourselves, for our cities, and be more open-minded. Be more open-minded and just try to think sympathetically and empathetically before we just spew out information or talk whatever we have to do. I think that's real good knowledge for everyone that we can be as human beings.
100%.
And Coach, I appreciate you coming through, chopping up with us. Appreciate this. We'll definitely have to do this again. Great episode, man.
Yeah, I'm around for sure. I appreciate y'all.
Definitely. But that's a wrap for, I don't know, we back though. We gonna have more content coming for y'all.
We back.
Be back, man.
You lost your dog, you been through it all. I know how they feel. Yeah, got a hole in my heart. I'm forever scarred, but